All right, now that everything is cleaned up and ready to mix, it'll be loaded fresh into a brand new session in Logic, and the magic is now ready to happen. Okay, so how do we take this chaotic pile of sound that's all fighting for the same space and turn it into something that resembles a final polished product? Well, you have to create a soundscape. You have to give all of these sounds somewhere to sit. So here is a picture of a band on a stage. Now, this isn't necessarily what you're exactly trying to duplicate, but you are trying to give everything that sort of an arrangement. That way, if someone is listening on headphones or speakers, you're giving them the illusion that if they shut their eyes, they're listening to a band on a stage or in a room. You have to give everything a space. So how do we go about giving something a space? Well, here are some of the things that can be done. I'm going to switch to another microphone here. As you can see, there's nothing going on with the sound right now. It's coming directly out of the center. There are no effects. It sounds like I'm speaking right in your ear. If you remember episode 9, once again, this is dry signal. So here's one of the most simple things to do. You make a recording stereo. If you want to add more room, you can put things on the left and right. It opens up a whole different world of opportunities as far as where you can stick things. So I can go all the way left with this. I can go all the way to the right with it. And I can go anywhere in between in the entire stereo spectrum, wherever I'd like to place it. So there's stereo. One of the other things you can do, other than going left and right, is going forward and back. So if you're wanting to arrange things like they are on a stage, my vocal, if this were my vocal, I'd put a little bit of reverb or echo on it just for artistic effect. But I do not want to put too much on it because I want it to remain sounding like it's right in front of you as the singer would be on stage. Now, for things that you want further back in the mix, like drum set, because once again, if we refer to the picture, the drummer is behind everybody on stage. So to make them sound like they are back a little bit, you could do something like a little bit of reverb. This is a very little bit of reverb. Maybe it now sounds like I'm 3 to 5 feet away, maybe. Here's a bigger one. Does this make it sound like I'm maybe 50, 100 feet off in the distance? Another thing you can do is use echo. I use that very sparingly because it can get out of hand. But that also makes it sound like I'm pretty far away, right? And if I wanted something to be far away and yet maybe have a wider sound, you use the stereo to your advantage and use a stereo delay, which also sounds like this. Far away, but also wide and all-encompassing. Now, two other effects that don't necessarily affect how something sounds spatially, where it sits in the mix, but are a very important part to making something sound glossy and professional, are compression and limiting. Now, I've been trying to keep this vlog interesting for people that aren't necessarily really interested in doing these things, but maybe are interested in knowing how it works. I am not going to go into all of the ins and outs of explaining how those two effects work because they are complicated. But here is a very quick description of both of them that should get you on the right track. A compressor is kind of like an audio shock absorber. It compresses the louder parts of a passage and turns the volume of them down so that they more closely match the intensity of the quieter stuff in a track. Much like if I back off of this microphone and talk quietly, or I get up really close to it and talk louder, your ear does not notice as much of a difference in volume change. There is a compressor running on this voiceover track right now. By gently pushing those louder parts back down a little bit, a compressor can really help kind of glue everything together nicely by keeping everything smooth and at a more consistent volume level. There are many different compressors running in all of your favorite commercially released music because if you compress different instruments together, they glue together. If you compress many tracks together, the entire song comes together as a cohesive unit. Now, taking the idea of compression to the limit, see what I did there? A limiter is doing something similar to what a compressor is doing, but it's doing it to the extreme. Take my analogy and replace those sponges with a pair of brick walls. Now those loud sound waves are hitting that brick wall and stopping. Whereas a compressor is forgiving and it kind of gently dampens, but will occasionally let something louder through. A limiter does not. It stops it right there. That loud sound wave does not get any louder after it hits that brick wall. So what this allows you to do is keep turning up the limiter, and those loud impulses do not get any louder, but you're bringing up the volume of everything quieter than that. So you're going anywhere between just turning the perceived volume level of something up by a little bit to going so extreme that there's no difference between whispering and screaming. Okay, so with that description in mind, here's a compressor. Now, what this is doing, the louder I get, the more it is taming the loud things to make them quieter, and that lets the quieter things shine through. Now, if I turn the limiter on, and have them both going at once, the compressor is knocking down the loud stuff, and the limiter is bringing up the volume of everything else so that everything sounds more even. To the point where if I take this microphone and reach out as far as I can while talking quietly, and then I bring the microphone slowly in as I start talking louder and louder, and as the microphone gets up to my mouth, I start practically yelling into it, your ears are none the wiser, and everything sounds relatively even. So now, how does all this stuff apply to the song that I've just finished so that we can turn it into a polished final product? Let's take a look. All right, now I realize that I could lose a lot of people really fast here because this is some pretty technical stuff, and most of the people that are watching this are just curious about how this works. There's no need to go into every little detail, and the people that do know about this stuff obviously don't need to learn about it. Starting off at the beginning, at the very bottom down here, we have 3 reference tracks. These are 3 commercially released songs from pretty famous artists. I can't play them on this video. On the off chance that these videos ever get popular enough to where I could actually make money off of them, I'd be demonetized for having someone else's copyrighted content in here. So just in case, I'm not going to share those songs exactly, but they are there for the purpose of comparing with what we're doing here. Every once in a while, you'll turn the song you're working on off and turn that song on and take a listen and see how they compare. Like things like bass level, things like how loud the drums are in the mix, how loud are the vocals, how much treble is there. You want everything to sound more balanced and even. So here is the starting point. I've taken all of the individual tracks, I've loaded them up in a brand new project, and they are all in stacks. We have one here for drums, bass, acoustic guitar, electric guitars, the lead guitar, the singing, the harmony vocals, the keyboards. These are all stacked together. It makes it easier to deal with them as a unit sometimes, but if I need to, I can open these up and reveal all of the individual tracks. So here's all the drums right here. So as a starting point, I have loaded this into a template. I used this one for the album, so there's already a few effects overall that are put in here, and this is the actual starting point that we have right now. Just a small note, this song is mixed already, and I'm just turning on and off the effects to show you the difference of what I did, but I did set all the volume levels already. That's the first thing I always do, is play with the volume sliders and make sure everything's nice and balanced. So, what I usually do when I'm starting out is I try to shore up the main rhythm section first, the drums and the bass, and for that reason I have them first and second in this template also. So I'm going to go ahead and expand the drums, and we're going to turn solo on that. And this is what the drums actually sound like as of this second. So, as far as the mix goes, I'm trying to create a space. What do I want these drums to sound like? Well, I want them to have a little bit of reverb. I want them to have just a little bit of that echo effect. And I definitely need them to be stereo. So, to start off with, here's the 2 overheads. Now, if you remember the drum episode when I set up the microphones, this is the pair of microphones that were on top of the drum set, catching it as a unit in stereo. So now what I can do is turn the left overhead all the way left and turn the right overhead all the way to the right, and that will recreate the stereo image that I heard when I was behind the kit playing. They're a little bit quiet because I'm not messing with the actual volume levels. This song is actually mixed already, and I'm just going over what I did, so I'm not messing with these volume levels, but those are in stereo now. The next thing I did to make the drum stereo was to take the 3 tom drums and put them in a different position each in the stereo spectrum so that they're spread out as well. Now going back to the mixer here, I have all the drum tracks here, and there's a bunch of effects here, but what these all basically boil down to are some form of volume adjustment, compression, or a reverb. And I've gone over all that already, so I'm going to turn all of those back on. And adding all of those effects alone makes a huge difference. Now you hear that kick drum and that snare drum have some smack to them. All right, I'm going to collapse this back to the master drum track, which is containing all of those other tracks, and I have some effects on this one as well. And all of these basically just amount to some equalizer changes, compression, and limiting, all the stuff we've talked about already. The EQ is stuff that you always have to do. You always have to tinker and adjust on something when you record it. If you have a bad frequency in there, you need to bring it down a little bit, or you want to boost something. This is just like adjusting the bass or the treble in your car stereo, or back when you had a home stereo and were able to adjust it. With this equalizer, though, you can adjust anything in the frequency spectrum. So I'm going to apply these effects on this master channel. And now this is the final overall drum sound. All right, now the bass. With no effects, here is the dry bass sound. Now we'll adjust it for the volume level. Add a bass amplifier simulator. A little bit of equalization correction. And a couple of different kinds of compression. And a little bit more of each. And there's the final bass sound. Okay, moving on to the rhythm electric guitars now. And if you remember the episode where I was recording these, I said that I would record things multiple times. Well, one of the reasons was, of course, to give multiple takes for comping, but also because I can do this. The exact same thing played twice, panned left and right, give you a nice stereo sound. Now we'll add some volume adjustment and equalization correction for those two. And then I'm going to add some more equalization correction and amplifier simulator. This is what's fun. These already have an amplifier simulator on them from when I recorded them the first time. I'm going to add a second one for kind of another layer of cool sound. And a little bit of compression. There's the final rhythm guitar sound. Okay, acoustic guitar. Here is once again the dry sound for the acoustic guitar. A little bit of volume adjustment, equalization correction, compression, and some reverb. Now it sounds like it's being played in a room and not in a closet. And another layer of both. Now, you might have noticed that just got really tinny. The reason for that is the acoustic guitar shares a lot of the same frequencies as an electric guitar, and they clash when they come together in the audio. I want just the high frequencies of the acoustic. That way, when you combine it with the rhythm electric, they don't clash. I just want that sparkly sound from the acoustic coming in on top of the electric guitars. That's what it sounds like without that. Moving on to the lead vocal. So here is the dry lead vocal sound. Another day, another phone will ring, say they can't hold on. And all those years I've done nothing to ease the sting. Said I can't go on. All right, we'll do some volume correction, equalization correction. We're going to control the S's a little bit. We're going to tame some of the S sounds. S's get out of control with microphones sometimes. We're going to do a few different kinds of compression and some other secret stuff that's going to make it sound a little more intense. Another day, another phone will ring, say they can't hold on. So we'll collapse this back to the main vocal track. This main vocal track, which of course includes all of the vocals, not just that one line we were working on. These effects will affect everything overall, and we have a little bit more equalizer correction, a little bit more compression, and some reverb. And here is the final lead vocal sound. Another day, another phone will ring, say they can't hold on. And all those years I've done nothing to ease the sting, said I can't go on. With each call, these four walls are getting closer by the minute. Can't please them all when your heart is never in it. Can't live your best years inside a prison cell. All right, harmony vocals. They are all still in the center right now, and all the effects are off, so you can hear the bare sound, and here's what they sound like, and I do have the lead vocal on just for reference. Step aside, passing through the great divide, 'cause we won't stand by. Sometimes you must stand and be the one to change the tide, spread your wings and fly. However, if I put these back where they were in the final mix, which from memory was left, right, right, left, left, that already makes a huge difference. Step aside, passing through the great divide, 'cause we won't stand by. Sometimes you must stand and be the one to change the tide, spread your wings and fly. Now, we're going to collapse that and turn on all the master effects for all those. Got a little EQ compression, and we have some reverb, and here's the final overall vocal sound with everything. Step aside, passing through the great divide, 'cause we won't stand by. Sometimes you must stand and be the one to change the tide, spread your wings and fly. And everything else that we've covered so far turned back on just for reference. Step aside, passing through the great divide, 'cause we won't stand by. Sometimes you must stand and be the one to change the tide, spread your wings and fly. With each mile, all the trials grow. All right. And the keyboards from a couple of episodes ago. Very simple, just the two parts that were recorded in that episode, and they required very, very little effects. This piano sounded almost perfect right out of the box, but here is the dry sound with no effects. That plugin provided all the effects that this really needs. I didn't need to add anything else. But I did do a little bit of EQ and compression. And that's the keyboard sound. All right, and last but not least, the lead guitar. 3 tracks straight out of that Wet, Dry, Wet episode. We have the wet left amp, which had a phase effect on it. We had the dry center with our hard rock sound, but nothing else. Then we had the wet right amp that has that comical amount of reverb in it. Giving you the final sound of... Well, that needed very little also. All I did on the master track containing all of them I did another amp simulator. This was once again to give layers. I obviously recorded these with amps, with microphones in a room, and I just added another amplifier simulator and room simulator on top of that to even further enhance the sound and a little bit of compression. So here's the actual final lead guitar sound. And that leaves us with what is now the final mix of this song. So there you have it. That song has been compared to the reference tracks many times as I was balancing all of the volume levels, as I was adding all the effects, playing with reverbs and all that stuff. And that is exactly how I wanted the song to sound at this stage. So now it's time to save this to a file that will be used in the next phase of this project. Now it sounds lively, like it's happening in a place. It's not just flat and two-dimensional. Also, just like a recipe, just the right small amounts of effects were able to bring out the potential of all those different sounds that you couldn't hear before. The mix is now a single stereo audio file on the computer, but it could have just as easily been a cassette tape or a reel-to-reel tape back in the old days. It's ready for its final treatment. Well, that's it for this one. Be sure to hit like and subscribe, because there's only a couple of things left to do, and they'll be covered in the next one, so stay tuned for the season finale of Goin Solo.